Okie dokie, hello every folks, and good morning. I saw this tweet last night, and it basically just had me thinking all night about different possibilities, so let's go ahead and get into this here. So, there was a tweet from Matsuno saying, hey, when I was offered the job for the remaster, I suggested the idea of adding branching paths, like Tactics Ogre, to recruit characters like Maluda or Islud. However, unfortunately, it was impossible to add dialogue within existing events while it was possible to add dialogue within existing events and include battle conversations, creating entirely new events was structurally impossible, so I gave up on it. There was also the fact that director Mahiro was particular about staying true to the original vision for this remaster, but the main reason was that it was structurally impossible. If there was a substantial budget, increasing the workload or staff might make it possible, but in that case, I believe it would be better to create a new game instead. Which, first of all, hell yeah, get on that new game! Like, we've been waiting for ages. Unicorn Overlord showed that you can bring back these old formulas and make them absolutely kick-ass, so let's get on it! Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about that, because the limitation specifically there, the little fly in the ointment, so to speak, is that they couldn't add new events. But I was thinking all last night, you do not need new events to make a lot of this stuff actually stick. We already saw the pieces that they could put in the game because we saw the pieces in that thingamajig that was pulled out by modders. We saw the pieces that did make it, we saw the pieces that couldn't. So, theoretically, if I'm understanding this correctly, please bear in mind I'm not like a modder myself, I do not know the internal structures of this whole thing, but the way that I'm understanding it, the basis that I'm operating off of here is that they have the existing skills that are in there. They have the existing locations that are there. They can't add new cutscenes. They can't add alternative variations of some situations, but they might still be able to reuse existing assets in different ways. So we'll get to the thumbnail in just a bit of a second, but first of all, let's just go ahead and talk about the obvious when it comes to jobs and things, like different rebalances and what have you. Okay, so let's just go down these individually. First of all, the most obvious thing that a bunch of mods just did, you just give them their passives. Like, every one of these classes has different passives. For the most part, there's stuff that is completely identifiable with them, and due to stuff like, let's say, Brawler being over on the Monk, or Throw Item being over on the Chemist, it's usually assumed that most will be carrying their passives with them. Then you get some weird situations where it's like, Black Mage, he's using his passive, but not really. And it also can't stack, so he is, but he isn't. Just give them all their passives. Why can't they all just have a passive? It gives you a chance to go try them out, like, White Mage over here with their Magic Defense Plus. That would be pretty notable. I mean, hell, it's referenced on the robe item that matches their uniform. Just give them the thing, So that's one of the most obvious things. But for another thing, as far as class rebalances, they wouldn't have to have gone far. I don't know necessarily, again, what kind of stuff is possible within the system, but look, they figured out the Archer back in Tactics Ogre PSP over like almost 2 decades ago, right? At this point. Anyway, point is, things old as dirt. But back in Tactics Ogre PSP, they took the Archer and they're like, okay, they still do the same thing of they aim harder or they aim even harder. And then they guarantee debuffs. Like, just give them more debuff weapons. They already have a few, and if they just guarantee debuffs, they are suddenly giving a reason to use the aim skill on other things. Their achievement is called Guaranteed Hit. Why is that not a thing? Why do they not have concentration built in? I don't know. It's right there. Do it. I mean, I'd assume they'd be able to adjust the hit formula on the White Mage. Like, just make those better debuffs, not trash, please. Samurai. Safeguard. Why no effect swords? Like, people have been begging for this one for God knows how long. Like, what has it been? Like, friggin' decades? They're like, please just let me use my fancy swords without things. Wow, words are hard. I can't speak. Anyway, hi, welcome. Third Shift Brain says hello. So just go ahead and let them use Safeguard, please, to not have their weapons explode. Would be kind of nifty. Got plenty of comments over on the Samurai video of like, oh, regen plus haste is amazing, actually. I still disagree, but hey, whatever. It's nifty. I would like to be able to use it more. Sure, would be pretty cool. Safeguard, please. Why do they not have built-in double hand? It's generally assumed that Samurai are absolute trash as far as their, physical fighting prowess goes, which is weird because, frickin' Samurai. So, I mean, it's very firmly established where Matsuno apparently sits on the Knight versus Samurai debate. Granted, when it comes to Bone Crusher, it feels like they would win most of the fight, and then, like, they end up Bone Crusher with their, like, fist because their weapon's been exploded, for his entire health bar, so maybe that's how that's meant to play out. Anyways, whatever. Let them use Double Hand. Let them use Safeguard. Then they have a choice over which thing, or maybe just both if they're the actual samurai themselves. That would be pretty nifty. Gives you a reason to actually stay as the samurai instead of Yaido always being on other things. And then go ahead and let them use longbows. Please, like, come on, let the longbows live. They want to have a life. Would be kind of nifty. Anyway, also, ninjas. Now, nothing directly to change with ninjas. They're pretty nutty as it is. Let arithmeticians calculate throwing things. Somebody left this comment yesterday, and that is genius. Why can't the arithmetician calculate throwing items? That would be hilarious. It's like, oh, like CT plus 3, they're just like throwing a bunch of Excaliburs from the sky. Oh man, just make your own Simon Belmont build out of this nonsense. Or not Simon, what's his face? Richter Belmont, there we go. So that'd be pretty nifty. Then from there, just let the mime use an accessory, and suddenly this ups its value by like 1,000%. So there we go. Job done. Also, maybe give the purses back to the ladies, because that was just kind of a weird change. I still don't know why that was there. But here's the more interesting part, okay? The one that I think makes a lot more sense than any of this. B-side fights, okay? We already know that they have the bits and pieces there to have the sprites for these other characters. Theoretically, they could probably be used wherever the hell they want to be. Now, let's go ahead and look at this, okay? You got something like, let's say, the Metal Gear Acid games or whatever else that have, like, B-side scenarios for everything. You have the bar fights and triangle strategy. This is partially what I was trying to explain last time. Let me explain it better, okay? So here's the thing. It's not just a case of you bring in the multiplayer battles. What you do is you make alternate versions for every one of the maps. Now, it doesn't have to be those same fights, but, like, let's say you take one of the random battles. I'm assuming that it doesn't count as an event to add another battle, okay? So let's say you have something like a 1% chance encounter in every one of these maps, okay? I don't know exactly how that works, but let's just say you have some really rare encounter that's available somewhere, right? And so what you do is you just make cooler scenarios that potentially reuse some of those old sprites. And also just... so, okay, let's say like you got Zyarkyle Falls over here, all right? Let's say you have some scenario that you have basically the opposite of what you had during that initial fight. Let's say you have some generic version that's going and using White Knight skills, and now suddenly you have to fight a White Knight, and let's say you have a guest Dark Knight with you. You don't have to use the actual like Dark Knight thing from over in Wodel. Just use the original stuff that was already there. Just do a flip side of that particular fight. Super rare encounter, kind of bizarre to even have it there, but it would be kind of nifty, right? Okie dokie, random interruption. But let's move on. So I'm going to assume that you maybe can't potentially interact with, cities and whatnot. Because, again, it just would be cool to have a rare chance encounter to do some kind of opposite to every one of the existing battles to some degree. I'm sure some of them can just be some more interesting, fun thing or what have you. But for example, like let's say with Lionel, it would be really cool to have a case where, let's say you're fighting the FFTA2 starter squad or something, and you're locked within the gates or something along those lines, And it wouldn't necessarily be out of the blue. Again, if this all ends up happening very rarely, we already have established with Cloud there that these machines not only exist, they're out there. Presumably, with all the other guys running around with Zodiac Stones, somebody might have unearthed one. And it's essentially what we have then is a case where, yes, stuff might have come in from other dimensions. Why the hell not? We have alternate stories where there's freaking airships flying around. We have that happening, so why not this? That sounds pretty cool. If World War I happened in the past, why not now? So... either way, I assume Lionel Castle can't have like a random battle added to it, but whatever. Like, let's say, maybe that same map can be reused in another location. I don't know. Like, the Fenlands wouldn't necessarily have anything too interesting, but if this was instead a rare encounter to, let's say, have a Lionel Castle, defense fight or something, that'd be pretty nifty. And they did this with Tor, is the thing. Like, they did this with Tor, and you could probably even implement it in a similar way, where they also couldn't necessarily add certain things. But what they did do is add these they added a couple of rare encounters. And I say rare, it's more like they were situational. Like, if you had a perfect run through a 115-floor dungeon, you got one shot at a mini-boss, okay? These bosses were OP versions of characters from back in the original SNES version with their original names and stuff. So, like, Aracel was one of your party members, and then she would come back as a Losser. And essentially, that was her original translation. And she just comes in really broken with, like, a 32 range short bow that insta-kills things just to rub in the salt. A bunch of characters that are coming in with what are functionally magical rocket launchers, and that would be pretty nifty. Like, let's say, again, you show up to somewhere nearby Orban over here, Like, let's say we got Arguay Woods, probably doesn't have too much of an interesting fight, but instead you have this like rare one-off encounter where you're fighting a generic version of Agrius and like Agrius and Gafgarian or something. Um, let's say, do we want to do? Well, I guess opposite Mount Germinus would be kind of interesting, although you just kind of send in the archers at that point. Fineth Creek. What if instead there was a bunch of like dragoons riding chocobos or something? Well, actually, I guess they can't use the mountain mechanic, so maybe never mind. Um, let's say, what do we got over here? We got Grow Heights. Sure. Let's say. Well, actually, yeah, in the desert. I mean, you have that alternate map in the desert that only ever gets used once in the game. What if instead, again, you bear with me, you fight in desert, but let's say you're getting attacked by, once again, Luso's team or something. Instead of showing up fighting behemoths, it's just like Luso with an army of behemoths, and they're just a mini-boss now. I mean, granted, you wouldn't be able to recruit them, but it would be a neat little boss fight situation there, okay? Let's say you wind up somewhere. Where do we want to put them over here? We could probably reuse something like the Dagar Pass over here to, let's say, instead have that Balthier thing, except again in reverse. He's the one showing up trying to rob you instead of anything else. Again, doesn't necessarily mean they have to be killed off, doesn't necessarily mean anything else, but it would be a neat little encounter, and maybe if they can't even use the original sprites, maybe you just make a sort of alternate version of all of these things, because we saw that they had most of the pieces there to make certain things. If you wanted to make Balthier, essentially you would just have Mysterio with his aim shot abilities. We already see the engineer reused in game anyway. Combine him together with let's say some break art skills. Just make him a thief or something. Just give the vibes of this original thing. You want to make your Dark Knight there, you just reuse Gaff's skills. Not exactly that difficult. It wasn't necessarily that different. Just give them a secondary of a samurai, and there you go. You're all good to go. Maybe have an enemy Temple Knight over here. Just get more Beowulfs out in the party. Who knows? Again, there's options for this. It just seems like random encounters would have been the way to go to maybe spice things up in that particular regard. Something other than just frickin' down here. Like, just why is this where all of the cool rando fights happen? Okay, anyways, sorry, I've been ranting about this for a little bit of a while, but you get the general idea. I think that would have been the key. It would be nice to see a lot of those existing pieces redone, but I think the trick really would have been to just have more interesting random encounters, to have that more weird stuff out there, because people still, look, people do not necessarily talk about Fineth Creek nearly as much as they talk about frickin' 11 Monk Encounter, okay? That thing, no one shuts up about that thing. The Samurai in the Woods, nobody shuts up about that thing. Cool random battles, the rare ones, those ones really stick with people, and I think that would have been the way to go, that they could have maybe reused those old sprites if they were already in game, but just do something with it, like maybe have these kind of more interesting reference teams and whatever else. Just something else, just something different than a lot of there's a lot of just kind of random trash encounters in there. Like, I saw somebody posting a picture the other day of like, oh, it's a monk that has a equipped crossbow and like nothing else going. Just like, surely there's something more that could have been done with some of those. I'd assume they could have been retweaked or something else. So yeah, if we're talking about just cool ways that they could have implemented those ideas, given more kind of late game stuff to just go explore around with, do these different challenge maps or what have you, what they could have done is, instead of, let's say, Disorder in the Order or whatever else, sure, make those maps farmable. Have those cases where, like, you've got some kind of okay, so we do that Dark Knight thing, but like, let's say we do that Dark Knight encounter, except his main thing is a samurai, and he ends up dropping like a Mass Immune or a Chiri or something like that. Just gives you like replenishable sources of rare weapons that you'd actually want to get and don't want to go through Mythos Deep for. There you go. You have these rare encounters that are just sort of out there. Maybe lock them in behind chapters 3, 4, something like that. Obviously it would be a little bit weird to be running into some of this stuff in chapter 1, but I don't know. I think it could work. I think that would have been potentially a way to do that. That would have been a lot of fun. So, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Because that's what I want. I want a mod to do that. If there's any modders watching this, like, again, pardon the spazziness because I'm on like cup of coffee number 3 and I have slept maybe 3 hours in the last 48 hours, but just, is that possible? Does that sound workable? Is this a thing? I mean, I know at the very least we could have sort of proto-Luso over here by giving like their thief at least some poach or something. I'm sure that part is already happening. Like I'm sure we'll have a Tic Tacs tweak or something within the hour, but still, it would be neat to have some of these other changes. So let me know what y'all think. Have yourselves a good one. I mean, obviously, look, we had some stuff that would have been nice to explore more of, like the Dragoon, but like that sounds like it would have required a more total rework. But okay, y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care. I will see you in the next one. I gotta get going. Take care.